Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Lynchburg. We are glad you are here. Today, we gather today in a spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on land originally part of the Monacan Nation. My name is Finis Southworth, a member of the executive board of this church and treasurer. If you're with us for the first time, we are glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this church community that we love. We would be happy to tell you more about our community during virtual social time following the service. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card found on our website. UULynchburg.org under Sunday services, or fill out the yellow card found in the back of the chair in front of you. When you fill it out, you may put it in the offering basket. You may also wish to join our Facebook group. We offer a special welcome to our guest speaker, Cindy Piester, who will speak to us on a climate change issue of concern to many UUs. Please note that this summer, our young people meet in their classes from the very beginning of the service. If you're a young person who would like to stay in the sanctuary, there are activity bags with activities, both in the foyer and in the hall next to the elevator. Also, there will be no RE classes on July 3rd. Now I invite us to release our worries about the world and our own lives as we enter into the service by taking some slow, calming breaths. As we enter our time of worship, we light the flame of our chalice, saying these words. Let's see if I can do it. Not to harm, to help, and not to hinder, to bless, and not to curse. You, O Spirit of life. Keeps going back up. All right. Opening words by Heifetz. This sky where we live is no place to lose one's wings. So love, love, love. Please open your hymn to hymn 21 for the beauty of the earth. They shall be called caregiver. Blessed is the person who gives shelter and food, clothing, toys, books, and tools, for they shall be called provider. Blessed is the person who opens doors in the child's experience, who explains the puzzling and wonders at the mysterious, for they shall be called teacher. Blessed is the person who shields a child from that which will wither or warp, who protects the child from abuse and exploitation, who guards against bullying and scorn, for they shall be called defender. Blessed is the person who takes the time to listen, who is there for a child in the darkness, who is aware of their fears, who speaks the words of encouragement in moments of despair, for they shall be called sustainer. Blessed is the person who guides a child in the search for beauty, who encourages them at what is daunting, who steadies them as they explore new experiences, who fires their aspirations and their dreams, for they should be called inspirer. Blessed are these persons who help bring an infant along the many paths to maturity, for in them is the future well-being of humanity. The ministries of our church are supported by the love, talent, and efforts of our many volunteers and staff, as well as the monetary support of the members and friends. If you have found this church to be of value in your life, then I invite you to use the offering baskets here in the sanctuary, or if you are on Zoom, to use the donate button found at uulynchburg.org for donations to First Unitarian, or you may put your donation in one of the baskets our greeters are passing. Jim, we'll just have one. I don't think this. Here you go. Thanks. Let me give you one too. We receive these monetary gifts along with the gifts of your time, work, and creativity, which also sustain our church, as together we generously support our congregation. Let us also commit ourselves to a unity of spirit to make manifest a more just, peaceful, and loving world.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Let's pause recording as Our speaker this morning is Cindy Piester, a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California. Thank you, Cindy, for being our speaker this morning. Cindy has written an action of immediate witness, protect what you love, reduce militarism to create a livable climate, and is asking for support for this AIW from UU congregations. Cindy, it's all yours. Thank you.
Share my screen. I'm looking to share my screen here with you all.
Oh, that is hard to do.
I'm sorry for the delay here. Give me a minute.
Sure. Screen two.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so very much for having me this morning. I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to speak with you all. And I really want to thank my friend Carol Vasacki and Larry Simons for reaching out to you to get this set up, and thank all of you for being so welcoming. So I'm a member of the UUJEC, and when we talk about climate change, that is really an economic situation and for everyone across the world, but much broader than that, of course. And I just want to call out how honored I am to speak to you on Juneteenth. As I thought about the racist history of our country, what comes to mind was the utter selfishness and greed and ignorance, and that allowed this whole situation with slavery to be advanced. And thankfully, at least on the books, we've gotten rid of slavery, but we know that racial conditions continue to exist throughout our country with the police shootings and all of the horrible discrimination in terms of climate change as well, with the global South being suffering the most, and many of our own communities are of people of color being discriminated against in ways where they will be suffering worse than the rest of us. And how does this relate to climate change other than that? Well, there is also tremendous greed, lies, suffering, and willingness to sacrifice broad swaths of our own population and the population of the world through the lies that Exxon put out, that was backed by our administrations at the top of the government when it comes to hiding climate change from us, the truth, and not taking the actions that are needed. So if ever in our history, there was a time for us to affirm our 6th Unitarian Universalist principle, the goal of world community with peace and justice for all, and our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. It is now. We need to remind ourselves we are the last generation that can prevent irreparable damage to our planet. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned us last year that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 6th assessment report is considered code red for humanity. And that is how I came to name my action of immediate witness. We also know he's called out, this is an atlas of human suffering if we don't act, and that the time to act is now or never. It's that urgent. So we know the CO2 levels are now the highest they've been in 3.6 million years. We know the Earth's surface temperature has risen 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times, requiring the most urgent action ever to avoid the worst impacts. We understand that many of the changes observed are unprecedented in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And this includes many aspects, not just rising sea levels, it's either too much water or too little water. And it's impacting the Earth worldwide with more frequent and longer droughts, heat waves, fires, extreme weather events, acidification of global oceans, loss of glacial, oceanic, and polar ice, causing sea level rise and reducing freshwater supplies. And the US DoD is the world's largest institutional contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And while they acknowledge the existential threat of climate change to their own organization, yet even though we are running out of fossil fuels, they continue to purchase emissions-intensive existing warfighting equipment like fighter jets and space vehicles that lock in decades of additional climate stress. And who's benefiting from this? Well, we know that the only people that are really, truly benefiting from this is the military industrial complex, especially the defense industry. Military greenhouse gas emissions result from and include the excavation and extraction of raw materials and fossil fuels needed to build and run today's military, the processing and smelting of ores and concrete for materials, the construction, maintenance, and supply of hundreds of bases and consequent energy used to develop, manufacture, and store or house, maintain, and transport personnel, equipment, weapons, and supplies across the massive global structure of bases. The use and disposal of toxic chemicals and fuels, including burn pits used in research and development, testing, training, public relations, flyovers, military preparedness, exercises, engagements, and wars. The destruction of the natural environment and habitats further degrade the global ecology and deprive the planet of key carbon sinks. And of course, the suffering, the human suffering is immeasurable. Not only to the individuals who are being bombed and their countries destroyed, their infrastructure destroyed, but also to our veterans. And I know this as a person whose husband, I'm a surviving spouse of a Vietnam veteran. We know that the veterans for generations have been killing, dying, and polluting to ensure our access to the same fossil fuels that have now put all of humanity, ourselves included, at risk. And the suicide rates of veterans when they come back. They tell us a story. They are not appreciating or enjoying these wars in the least. They get over there and they don't believe the reasons that we've been told why we are going to war. Oh my goodness, somehow I've jumped way ahead. Sorry, I don't know how I did that. Okay, yeah, so here we're back where, I'm sorry for that little glitch there. And then the global military emissions, including war impacts, are estimated to be 6% annually of our total greenhouse gas emissions. And this comes to us from Scientists for Global Responsibility. This makes militarism an important but little recognized driver of climate change. Well, our UU churches and we as individuals and people across the globe have struggled to reduce our own footprint and the footprint of our communities. We have not really taken into consideration the impacts from our military. The military is treated with such reverence and respect by so many who wish to serve the veterans. But we, at this late hour, we can no longer afford to overlook military emissions. 6% of our annual emissions from global militaries. And the United States also bears responsibility for something like 29% of the world's cumulative greenhouse gas emissions, the largest of any nation in the world. That number is lessening over time as China moves forward with their tremendous impact through coal, the burning of coal. But nonetheless, over these last decades, the US led cumulative emissions because we were an early industrialized nation who realized that we must have access to fossil fuels in order to win and further our global effort to dominate the world to seek more fossil fuels. And of course, the impacts of that are felt all over the world, in Bangladesh and around the world, where the scarcity of water and food is driving populations, along with wars, to leave their own countries and leave where they live within their own countries and become refugees. When people around the globe are already being displaced from their homes by the effects of the climate crisis. And this slide, the UU Service Committee really wrote up a wonderful piece that they wanted to include in the AIW, because the individuals that they work with themselves, many of them are being faced with tremendous difficulties because these refugees that are fleeing because of climate are then met with militarized borders, and they're recategorized in terms of how they are dealt with, and they are not being allowed the normal routine processes to allow them to become citizens in other countries. So, and we know this from our own country, right here in the United States. This picture is from the US southern borders, where we have drone surveillance and have had for years. And instead of providing complementary protection to refugees, governments are responding with militarized approaches and the exclusion of displaced peoples and increase the climate effects of military emissions. And here at home, we feel the incredible impacts of climate on our economy in terms of all of our how we resource our budgets and what we can't cover, because so much of our money is going to fund the DoD. And people are paying a price, not only around the world, but right here. And in my own church here, the UU Church of Ventura, one of the focuses for many years, and one of the reasons I joined it, is because we have a huge population of homeless people right here, with the price of housing going through the roof. And so we're not able to meet those needs at home. We're not able to meet our healthcare needs because so much of our resources are going for the military establishment and are not really covering climate change. Scientists tell us that the nationally determined contribution of the United States is critically insufficient and is falling far short of a fair meeting of the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. So even though we have told the world that we prefer to lead by example, when it comes to climate change, the truth tells us a completely different story. Right at this moment, because of the war in Ukraine and our support for the war in Ukraine, which I understand. I mean, my goodness, the people in the Ukraine are suffering bitterly, direly, and we want to support them. But what is the correct way to support the people in the Ukraine? Is it to begin opening up more massive fossil fuel drilling in our public lands across the United States so that we can fuel Europe? I mean, that is a question we must ask ourselves. Why are we not pushing for negotiations and diplomacy in the Ukraine? Because we understand that this fuels climate. And John Kerry came out with a statement saying that the sooner the war in the Ukraine ends, the better it is for climate. It's another way of telling us that we are at a point in our lives, at a point in time where there is no such thing as a winnable war, because our military emissions are coming back to us and worsening climate change. And the climate change is causing tremendous problems within families. I was so grateful for the reading that you had this morning, or maybe it was the music, I'm sorry, where it was discussed about the impact on children. We ourselves are already experiencing globally the tremendous impact of climate change on people now. But the children and the families are stressed. What do we tell our children? How can we act to go forward? What is our most effective action in taking this on? So when I wrote this action for immediate witness, I went back through the history of what the UU has done nationally with former statements of conscience and with our former actions of immediate witness. And there's a tremendous history there. We have come together, and I think the earliest one was in 2006 to call out global warming and to act. And we have seen those actions. I mean, what you have done with the Green Sanctuary Movement is inspiring. And my own church is also a member of the Green Sanctuary Movement. And that means so much. We have our rideshare program to reduce emissions and everything, the solar on the rooftops and trying to take home our dishes and wash them at home or bring our own in and take them home and wash them, whatever we have to do to reduce our footprint, to be conscious about what we eat. And when I think of the things that the UUs have done already to lessen our footprint, I am so impressed and touched. But it's not enough. And part of it is not enough because we have not yet taken on the challenge of addressing military emissions. They were ruled out in the Kyoto Accords. The military worked under the Clinton administration and was successful in having those emissions be optional and reporting to our United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And so I feel that the AIW that I have written now, and which has been very widely supported, and I'm so grateful to report that numerous UU national organizations have stepped forward to support it. And that includes the UU Service Committee, the UU Social Justice Group, the BIPOC Caucus on Climate Change, the Young Americans UUs that are working for climate justice, the UUJEC, and the UU Peace Network have all come forward to support this. And so have the UU statewide action networks. And that includes the State Action Network from California, from Florida, from Iowa, from New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Michigan, and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting who the others were, but at least 10 Texas, Wisconsin, they've all come forward to support this. At the same time, right as we speak, this is being voted on right now in the preliminary round of voting. So if you have any delegates, I urge them to vote for this now. So what I'm calling for here is that we include our military emissions reporting to the United States in our nationally determined contributions, and also in our reporting to the United Nations Framework on Convention Change. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And for actions for our churches to recognize that militarism and war are major obstacles to meeting the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement, requiring these urgent actions to be met. to hold educational events such as you held today. Thank you so much for doing this. And to understand there is no planet B, and that we must take responsibility for this and actually target the elephant in the room, which is the DoD's greenhouse gas emissions, and lead by example. So I will conclude, and I thank you all very much for all of these years doing what you can do in your personal lives and as a church to address the issue of climate change. And I ask you now to endorse this and to move forward with the next step, which takes courage to confront our own government and let the rest of the world know that we stand with them and we are confronting our own government to really and truly lead by example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. For all those on with us today, if we have some time for discussion, so if there's any questions or comments here in the sanctuary, please just step up to the microphone. I'm sure Cindy would be happy to answer any questions. Or online, just unmute and start talking. So. You must have been crystal clear, Cindy. So, there's been some minor updates to the AIW since the one we sent out to the congregation a couple of weeks ago. So we will send that out to you all, and in order for us to endorse it, we'll have to have at least a town hall meeting, if not a congregational meeting. Does anybody know the rules? Do we have to have a congregational meeting, or can we do it at a town hall meeting?
I think you can have a town hall, it's an endorsement,
Yeah.
and changing the bylaws.
Okay. So Cindy will have to have a town hall meeting to gather the sense of the congregation and before we can endorse it, but we'll make sure to get the latest version out for everybody to read before that town hall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cindy, someone told me that the United States government is responsible for 50%, I think it's the military mainly, of the effect on climate change, something to that effect. So I was very surprised when your statistics said 10%. I mean, 6%. Have you heard of that statistic that I just mentioned?
Well, you know, there's been a lot of conjecture about how much our military missions are impacting the climate. And part of that is because so much has been hidden. Nothing is transparent. But what I just quoted from the Scientists for Global Responsibility, they're saying that globally, military emissions from all nations, of course, with the US leading that figure, is around 6% of annual emissions, but that is no small amount. I would not say that it's impossible that it's 50%, but there are a number of other missions that are very responsible, you know, transportation and that kind of thing, are flying and driving and our other industries that don't necessarily directly impact the climate. But there are a lot of hidden emissions in the military accounting that they respond to. And we've been pushing very hard for that to be part even of our own country's efforts to find out what the bottom line is on that, because they don't include emissions they call bunker fuels, where shipping lines are actually delivering of what war fighting equipment to different countries. That goes into the budget for those countries and not our own. So I do think 50% is probably off, but I understand why people are thinking that it's so high, because it really is high and it's not transparent and it's not being counted. properly.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. And
Cindy,
thank you.
Cindy?
this is Bob Morris, and I just wanted to say that Makana and I have both already voted as delegates at GA to put this particular thing forward. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm a delegate and I'm going to have to vote when I get off, but thank you very much.
Cindy?
Yes.
This is Richard Bain, Dick Bain. I have a question that, the UU Church is not nearly as big as the Protestant churches and Catholic churches. Are they doing this kind of work? And are we cooperating with them? Are we communicating with them about this?
The UUA, are you asking about that?
Well, no, I just meant the other churches, the Protestant churches, the Catholic churches. I don't know what they're doing or how we're communicating with them, or if we are.
Well, I have tried to reach out to the UU churches through the UU action networks, and some of them informed their churches and sent them the AIW, and some didn't. 10 states doesn't cover the US. I really haven't had the opportunity to personally reach out. I've just had to be focused on my role in this, but so I don't know. I don't honestly know how many UU churches across the country are open to this, supportive of this, aware of this. I would understand if there are those who are reluctant to support it, because I'm from the state of Ohio originally, and I have a close friend back there and family back there, and it really and truly is, at least sections of Ohio, very much Trump country, and remain in denial about climate change to a certain extent, or how serious the situation is. So I can't actually tell you the answer to that. I do know that the UUA has been supportive in getting this thing included in the AIWs. It's been a very long process, lots of twists and turns, and that we do have a support from those entities that I mentioned to you. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Cindy, this is Larry. I think Dick was asking if you're aware of other churches like the Catholic churches doing.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't get that. Forgive me.
And is the UUA communicating
Yes.
with them?
There are other churches that are really coming together to support climate change. They've got coalitions across the country. I think the Methodist Church and the Catholics are on it. I'm not sure what all the denominations are that are fully supporting it, but there is, I think, like Buddhist organizations, and there are those that are really fighting to work together to stop climate change and mitigate it. Yes. I just how vast that network is, I'm not sure. There is an effort called Green the Church, and other efforts that are really national in scope that are dealing with climate, though. So I think there is a lot of cause for hope in terms of the faith community moving towards this.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. So we'll close with hymn number 175. We celebrate the web of life. David.
We celebrate the web of life. It's
As our service draws to a close, we extinguish the flame of our chalice as we say these words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, community, or the fire of commitment. These will carry in our hearts until we are together again. Do we have a postlude, David, or not today?
Benediction? Do we have a benediction? Otherwise,
I don't have a benediction here.
All right.
It's a summer church. We don't need one.